You're now listening to Sound Talent Media. Check out more shows at soundtalentmedia.com.
Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm Matt Migaki, the vocalist of Cryptopsy and the host of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, where I sit down with fellow metal musicians. We talk all about their lives and music while sharing killer craft beers. If you've ever wanted to sneak backstage and share a beer with one of your favorite musicians, well, Vox and Hops is the podcast for you. This week on the podcast, I dropped a killer episode with Kelly Schaefer of Atheist. There is this episode and over 440 other ones to help you enjoy life, metal, and craft beer. So what are you waiting for? It's time to become a Vox and Hops head. Cheers!
Hey there, everybody. How's it going? Before we get started, I just wanted to make sure that you had a chance to listen to the special announcement that was a couple episodes back. I believe episode 114 was the special announcement, because we're giving away stuff, and it's in conjunction with the podcast and newsletter and all this jazz. So if you haven't checked that out, you make sure and go back a couple episodes and listen. I don't want to rehash it here, but just want to make sure everyone has the opportunity to get in on the new thing that we're doing. So slide back there and check this out after you get done with this episode. Before we go too crazy off the deep end, I want to talk to you about Sinusoid. Sinusoid guitar cables. They've been with the show for a very, very long time, and I think that they're just the greatest. They're so awesome. And if you need instrument cables, and guess what? You probably do if you're listening to this podcast, you got to hit them up. They have a 100-year warranty. They make the best cables in the business, and they are some of the best folks around. And they also have a custom cable builder, which you can go right to their website, build exactly what you need, you can put it together with the Neutrik ends if you want, whatever, your choice. It's dealer's choice. Or, well, they're the deal. I don't know how that works. Maybe not dealer's choice, but it's your choice. And you can get whatever kind of color tech flex you want. You can get it with different colored cables underneath, different brands of cables, just everything. Anything you can imagine that would be available to customize on a cable, you can do it there. And it's all right on their website at sinusoid.com, so make sure and check them out. And we also have to talk to you about Gun Street Wiring Shop, the wonderful, wonderful Gun Street Wiring Shop out of Bend, Oregon, making custom wiring harnesses for your guitar. So maybe you got an old Strat laying around and you just want to breathe some new life into it. There's an easy way to do it. It's almost like getting a whole new guitar with the sounds that you can unlock. Maybe you want to try some crazy series parallel switching thingy mabobber phase inversion something or other. That's where you go. You go to Gun Street Wiring Shop, you hit them up. If you don't see exactly what you need on the website, you email Sean and he will get you squared away with exactly what you need, and has awesome customer service. I know from experience because I had to use it because I'm not very handy, apparently. Even though I'm kind of dumb, I was still able to get my harness installed with Sean's help, and my Les Paul is sounding awesome now. So check them out, gunstreetwiringshop.com, and let them build the harness of your dreams. All right, without further ado, my guest today is none other than Mr. Jack Deville from Mr. Black Pedals. We've been wanting to do this for quite a while. We were finally able to make the schedules align and make it happen. So enough preamble, blabbering nonsense. Here is the show. All right, everybody, welcome back to the ToneMob.com podcast, show about guitar tone and the people behind it. I'm your host, Blake Weiland, and with me today, I have a very special guest that we've been trying to get for a long time, Mr. Jack Deville from Mr. Black.
What it is, man.
Yo, how's it going?
You know, another day in paradise.
Yes. Well, we did have a good time, right?
Yeah, no, that was great. That was great.
Yeah. So this is another fortunate, a lot of you guys know that I usually do these remote, and this time we're live and in person in the Shred Shed, so these are always kind of a treat and a little bit more fun in a lot of ways.
Face to face, man.
Yeah, and less worry about internet gremlins creeping in and destroying everything, because that's always a little bit of a gamble.
This should run smooth.
So yeah, we talk all the time. A lot of people know that, and some people don't, but now they do. But there's actually a lot I don't know about you. Which is surprising for the amount of hours we've spent on the phone together.
Maybe it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Retain some mystery.
Keep the mystery. So I don't know, I don't really know how you got started, playing guitar, what got you interested in this stuff in the first place. It's not something we've ever talked about.
Yeah, no, you're right. Wow. I guess I was 10. And My sister had had a friend, Moy, a friend of hers. Like Anne is actually her name, but Moy means little sister in Chinese, I guess.
Okay.
At any rate, she had some brothers, Chris and Brendan, and we ended up getting arrested together years later. But they were like friends of mine, lived in the neighborhood or what have you, and those two got into guitar, and so I got into guitar as well because obviously I wanted to be like them. They were the cool older kids around or whatever. And I ended up learning from their teacher. Robbie Dunbar was his name initially, and then I don't remember why I stopped taking lessons with Robbie, but I started taking lessons with Doug Doppler, who now is like Doug's always been like a maniacal shredder. But now works, I believe, with Orange, and he's done guitar as his life. That's his job and career. So I ended up learning from him, and with a heavy focus on theory and all that kind of thing, like just learn how to technique, like alternate pick and do your modes and learning all that the really technical end of things. And that's kind of how I got into guitar. And then like later teens, punk bands and all that kind of thing.
You were playing in some it seems like you were playing in like a lot of crust bands and things like that, if I remember. Yeah,
when I was like later teens, that's kind of the crowd I ran with. It was like the Crusties and those dirty, grungy, dangerous people.
This is in the Bay Area, right?
Yeah. This is Berkeley, Oakland, and the East Bay mostly. I mean, we played all across the Bay Area, but mostly East Bay.
Which is kind of an interesting departure because I know you as the big hip hop fan, which is is a lot different than a crusty punk.
Yeah, well, I mean, times change, and you get older, and your friends die or get arrested or get involved in all kinds of bad business, and honestly, sleeping outside sucks. I'm not gonna lie, like it's weak.
Even in California.
Yeah. I mean, it still rains and it's still cold. So it's that lifestyle gets old.
Mm-hmm. So you came up to the Pacific Northwest about what time?
This was December 27th, 2007. We came up here. I followed a woman up here, and she lives in Louisiana now because that's how life works.
The way the cookie crumbles sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, she made her decision, as did I, and but yeah, I followed her up here we kind of made a trip in March. My friend Mike lives up here, and he'd been living up here since 2000, I believe. He was another dude I knew through the Bay Area punk scene, and we're good buddies, He does a lot of the graphics for Mr. Black stuff.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, Mike Freeman, he's a tattooer, so if you come to Oregon and you want, like, a good tattoo, that's who you go to.
All right.
It'll hurt, but, Mike will get it in there and make sure it's proper. Regardless, we came up in March 2007 to visit Mike, and my sister took a job up here out of college because she actually did all that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
And we came up and got tattoos from Mike, and my girlfriend at the time, Nancy's her name, still is her name. She kind of just was immediately like, yeah, I'm moving here, and you can come or you can stay, but I'm moving here.
It's kind of, I mean, this place has that effect on people. It seems.
It got me, man. I remember we went to Dots like after getting tattooed, and like we got some French fries or whatever. It was like $5,
mm-hmm.
And it did in the Bay Area. That's just out. You can't do that. Like that just don't happen.
Right.
And it was like a whole plate. I mean, like a large platter of French fries. Not some dinky little like $7.50 and it's like 6 little pieces of potato. No, this is like a whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
$5, no tax or nothing. I bought cigarettes and a Gatorade, and they gave me change, and it was like a quarter, or like it had a 5 at the end of it.
You're like, whoa.
Yeah, it was like a normal number. Like I don't know. So. I was an auto mechanic at the time, and looked into like what's the cost of living up here, and like how much would I make as a tech, and it was slightly less, but the cost of living was like just a fraction of what it was in the Bay, and I'm like, this is crazy. You're like, yeah, I'll move up here with you. So quit the band down there, and then saved up some cash and put everything in a U-Haul, and we came up on the 27th, 2007. That's
what's really interesting about you when I talk to you is you're like, yeah, I remember the 27th of 2007. I'm like, pfft. Like, I remember, yeah, it was like 4, 5, 7, 12 years ago. I don't know, something like that. And you're like on the dot with everything.
It's numbers, just numbers. Yeah. Everybody's got their things that they're like good at. For me, it's numbers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's for sure. You're always blowing my mind. It's code. It's simple. No, it isn't, Jack. I don't know what any of that is.
I think it is, but I don't know. I've learned everybody's kind of got their things that they're good at and things they're not good at. And Not everybody's good at everything.
So I remember this is I'm not sure what year, but you'll probably remember what year. But like the first time I seen any of your stuff was through Andy doing some of the PGS demos, when it was Jack Deville.
Oh, okay.
Specifically.
Yeah, okay.
I think the Deuce Coupe is the first thing I seen. I don't remember what year that was, but
Deuce Coupe would have been. I'm trying to think here, the progression through that. That was after Mod Zero. That was late. That was 11. Deuce
Sounds
Coupe, I
about
believe
right.
It was like April 11. That period of time is like really messy in my life, so I don't have a date for that one because it was just that was some crazy stuff happening then. But that was April. I know it was April 2011.
is that anything you can elaborate on, or is that best kept under the?
No, we can talk about it.
What was going on?
So, like I said, I moved up here with a woman, but she lives in Louisiana now. So that kind of happened. She decided that she needed to pursue other ventures in life. And obviously, when you lose your partner, you reevaluate your position in life, drive on the wrong side of the road, engage in some pretty risky behavior and all that kind of thing. And so I was drinking really heavily. That's why I can't really put a date on it because it was, I mean, I'm not a big dude. You know this. We're sitting in front of each other. We're talking about weight earlier. But at my size, when you're knocking back fifth or two a day, that's your memory blurs, as it were.
Right. Yeah.
know?
I mean, I think at that level, at a fifth or two, it doesn't really matter how big you are to some degree. That's just a lot.
You build a tolerance. You know, you drink like that, you can hit a pint and still be okay. But after two of them or three, you're definitely, I don't know. It all blends together.
That's gnarly,
you know?
man. That's real. That's like Lemmy level stuff right there.
It was pretty hard, man. That was not a good time in life, you know. But I mean, the Mod Zero came out of that, and that was a pretty cool thing.
That's insane. So that was 2011, and then there was a shift at some point. I mean, was it the Dark Echo that was the last Jack Deville?
The
Quote
Deuce
unquote?
Coupe was.
The Deuce Coupe was.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there was a shift from being a Jack Deville branded line to the Mr. Black branded line, and that's when things really seemed to take hold.
Yeah.
What was that all about? If you can elaborate on that.
Somewhat. I'm somewhat legally bound, but basically, Mr. Black was me running my own company and brand rather than working with somebody. Something I think a lot of people don't realize with the Jack Deville products is I lost my ass on those. Like, lots of money gone. I was younger and more trusting, and someone that I knew, I don't know them anymore, but saw an opportunity to make some money, and so they did. And after kind of going around and around with the lawyers and all that kind of thing, I realized it would probably be smarter to suck up the loss on the Jack Deville products and simply start a new line, such that it would be impossible for any kind of subsequent like reparations or restitution to take place, you know, so they couldn't say like, oh, well, I helped build this company and now I want a piece when it's worth money and all that stuff.
Gotcha.
You know?
After the fact type of deal.
Right. So that kind of tough decision, obviously, to put your baby down, but you know, at the same time, if your baby's dying, you can only hump the dream for so long.
Right. And also if it's sort of somebody else has already put the bullet in it. To some degree.
And there's like a liability there, you know, like, yeah. So that was beginning of 2012, January 31st, 2012.
And what was the first Mr. Black product?
That was the Superman.
Superman.
Yeah. May 5th, I believe, was when that was conceived and executed. I think the release was June 15th, 12, I believe.
What was the process like for that? That was pretty unique. People weren't really doing that at the time.
Yeah, so interesting one there. It's a funny story on the name, too. We can come back to that. Remind me about the name for that. Okay. There's a great story surrounding how that product got named. So at that time, we're looking at like early 2012, late 11. Jack Deville's dying. That brand is like, you know, kind of, I think we hit the NAMM show in 12, and that was the last, yeah, we did. And then that was the last NAMM show. And came back from that, and I'm like, oh, this is awesome. I owe like, there's a big number and a bunch of zeros like after that number of debt, right? And it's like not a good situation. And I didn't really have any money or any of that stuff. So I've always worked on contract for like anybody who will give me money. Like I just don't really care. If you need something hard done, you know who to call, and they do. And so Callenbred called me up, and Nick, he and I had been like talking, and we'd worked together on and off since '08 in different like facets and capabilities or what have you, or what's the right word? Like quantities, something like that. We work together in different ways.
Capacities.
There it is.
There we
I
go.
should know that. That's like capacitor, right? That's an electronics term.
Totally.
So Nick approached me and says like, "Hey man, I need some help like designing this product. I really want to make this Echo Rec, and I didn't know what that was. So he has one, and he shows me this thing, and I remember he'd been working on this for years, like rebuilding this thing, and it was just a raggedy
An
pile.
original one?
Yeah. And it was just, dude, I mean, just like the mechanicals are mostly there, but like I think he even rewound the motor. Like, it was pretty whooped.
Yeah.
Like everything in this thing, and he'd rebuilt it completely, but he was having trouble kind of capturing what that was and putting it into a guitar pedal. And so he hit me and he's like, "Hey, I know you like do programming and all that kind of fancy stuff. Like, you think you could help us with this?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah. I mean, sure. What do you want to do?" And we get together and kind of talk about the scope of the project and the technology to be used. And he shows me, a couple different options, and I don't like any of them because I'm me. And you know how it is. Uh-huh. So we eventually settle and kind of figure out like we're going to use this one part, and here's the limits within the project. The scope of the project is defined, and I'm like, all right, cool. Well, thanks for the job. And so take off there and start working on that. And anyone who's ever worked with me knows I work like pretty fast, real quickly and accurately. There's like, you look at the pedal shelf here and you probably find like 12, 15 different ones I worked on. But they happen really fast. And so the Echo Rec ends up, like most of it gets knocked out really quickly, the part that I'm involved in. And so I'm left with like, all right, cool. So now I'm sitting around waiting for like revisions and, what's got to come back and get like changed or updated, modified, all that kind of stuff. And so I start playing around with the same part, and I'm like, well, this is neat. I didn't know I could do that, and start, goofing around, making effects or whatever, and knock out a few. And me and Nick are drinking one night at this little place called Vintage on, I think it's like 80th and Stark, maybe. I don't even know if it's still there. It probably is. But we're all hammered, and I'm like, what am I going to make, man? And Nick's like, what you should make is a reverb pedal. I'm like, a reverb pedal? That sounds dumb. Nick's like, no, it's really hard, And for me, that's kind of a thing. Like, is it difficult? And then I want to do it. So he starts telling me, he's like, yeah, you should do like a modulated reverb pedal. I'm like, well, that don't make no sense. For one, reverb doesn't happen in guitar pedal format. For two, reverb doesn't modulate. Like, these are things that don't happen naturally, and just, we're logical. So this is not stuff I can think would ever occur. So you don't have anything to model it off of. And this is also on the heels of coming off the Echo Rec, and like, here's a physical device that we want to replicate the sound of, figure it out.
Right.
This is just freeform and make it up. Regardless, start pursuing it a little bit and end up coming up with Supermoon algorithm. Show it to Nick, and he's like, "Man, this sounds pretty good, dude. Like, I don't know. This is really special. Cool." It's like, "What are you going to do with it? You want to sell it?" No, I think I'm going to make it. And so that kind of birthed that project. And I guess the Mr. Black line, that was the first one.
Superman started it all. See, I didn't know that. For some reason in my head it was the Dark Echo, but
yeah, no, that was the first like guitar pedal I designed from ground up, but that was '08. That was like a long time ago. That was 35th Street and in the upstairs apartment.
I've got one of those.
Yeah. That was like, those are handmade, hand soldered, blah, all that stuff, like real chore to make those things, but at least in that style,
We can come back to that in a little bit, but I don't want to get too far away from the Supermoon name before we
go
there.
So this thing didn't have a name. This is, cool sounding guitar pedal. I, had done the layout on the Echo Rec and kind of liked the way that they wanted to make that thing. So I'm like, well, I bet I could do that for me, but different, and now I'm not limited by like someone else's design requirements, so I can do it the way I want, like put the power jack where I want to put the power jack, on the right side. That's how I think. It's an input, so all the inputs are on the right side. The Echo Rec, if you look at it, the power's on the left side.
Okay,
and
gotcha.
That's an output because that's the side that it comes out of. Anyway, without those limitations, I'm like, I can do this my way. So do the layout and the back end of the whole thing, and it's basically done except the name. I can't think of this, right? So it's Cinco de Mayo, my friend Sarah's birthday, and she's having a party. And it just so happens to also be a supermoon that particular night. Now, for whatever reason, I have never heard this term.
Okay.
I don't know what supermoon is. So, I go to this party, and this is 12. Yeah, so I'm still seeing Victoria. And we're having fun and drinking and all that stuff. And like, late 20s crowd does or whatever. And everybody's running around this party. Oh, yeah, this is a good little side note. My buddy Ian shows up, and he's kind of a loose cannon. So he starts like lighting off fireworks and all this nonsense in the house. And like, it's a total disaster. Sounds like guns and bombs and all that stuff's going off. And similarly, Ian brings out this like can of, or not can, but little jar of like ghost pepper sauce or one of those like, what's the next one? Scorpion pepper?
Yeah, the scorpions are hot. Yeah.
Whatever like the crazy one is. And Sarah had this cake. I believe it had like a raspberry, some kind. I mean, it was a nice cake. Don't get me wrong. Someone made it for her, I believe, and it had like a nice raspberry kind of thing on the, almost like ketchup, but it's sweet, right?
Okay, yeah,
like
yeah.
a dressing on top.
Yeah, I got you.
It looked just like this spicy sauce. So Ian being Ian, of course, like douses the cake in this, and everybody's screaming at this point because their mouths are on fire. At the same time that all this pandemonium is happening, people are also running around yelling "Supermood, Supermood." That's what I thought they were saying, right? Supermood with a D at the end.
Oh.
And I'm like, everybody's happy. This is awesome. I can't believe it. Stupid me. I didn't know it was a super moon.
Okay.
And I didn't realize that, this is happening. This is a super moon, right? Not super mood. But I thought everybody was in a good mood, and then this cake is going on and everybody's happy. Super mood is what I thought they were saying. Turns out it's super moon. I'm like, what is this nonsense? I look outside and I see the moon. It's, big or whatever. It's the moon. I mean, let's be real. Like it's still there. I mean, it'll be there sometime soon. I'm like, that's a pretty cool name. And, the light bulb goes off, and then there you go.
There you go.
Boom, there it is.
Nice. That is funny. You have a lot of those stories. And then all of a sudden people are running around, and I don't know what's going on. I'm like, I don't even know. Like, I'm such an old man. Like, ever since I've been, like, 20, I've been an old person. I'm like, I don't want to go to a party. Like, leave me alone. I'm home.
Oh, similarly.
Eat a cheeseburger or something.
That same house, man. I took Nick to a party there one time, and we're up in the basement with Nick and Steph, and Nick's like, we got to leave. And I'm like, why? And he's like, we're going to die in here, dude. Like, this is totally unsafe. Like, there's one exit. We're in a basement. If this place catches on fire, and I'm like, you're too old for this, man. That's what it is.
Yeah, I think I'm a little more like that. I'm like, yeah, I don't need to. But times, I mean, you've texted me before. You're like, hey, Rob and I are eating. Like Keely was in town, and you're like, and I'm like literally like grilling something for dinner already. You're like, you got to come down. I'm like, I'm too old. I'll see you guys later. Like,
it happens. I mean, we all mellow out. I don't really go to parties like that anymore. That was years ago.
Mm-hmm. So we did the supermoon, and then was the Dark Echo the next thing to come back into the line?
No, that was the Tunnel Worm, I believe, was the next one.
Okay,
on the
interesting.
list. Yeah. And that was kind of just to prove that I could do it again, because nobody now they do through zero flangers, but you got to look at this. Like when the Mod Zero came out, that was late 10, Namsho 11. There was the Fox Rocks and there was the Flanger Hoax, and there may be another one, but I believe both of those were like out of production and or extremely difficult to find, and so nobody was doing through zero flangers. And that's kind of what made the Mod Zero cool. And it was analog and all that hoopla or whatever, but that's up for debate anyway on that topic. Regardless, Tunnel Worm was more just to prove that, check it out. Did this cool reverb, I can do it again. Just like, look, let's do another through zero flanger.
The Tunnel Worm because I never did get to see one of those in person. Is that digital or analog?
That's a DSP.
Okay,
that's
it is.
A DSP.
Interesting.
Yeah. That's why it was 179 instead of like 250 or 280 or whatever the Mod Zeros were.
Gotcha.
And why I didn't lose money on that, and why I could keep making pedals unlike the Jack Deville stuff, which didn't work quite the same.
So let's because I know you get this question all the time, and you've explained it to me, but maybe you can explain it to other people. The Shepherd's End is probably my favorite flanger that I've ever played.
Yeah, that thing's cool.
And so what's the difference between the Tunnel Worm and the Shepherd's End? I know that's a common question.
Yeah, lots. A lot. For one, I believe that's the only... No, I guess now Jamie did it too. He got him a Shepherd oscillator in the Pyramids pedal.
Okay.
Regardless, the Shepherd's End was 15, I believe.
It sounds about right.
15.
Yeah.
Yeah, and at that time, that was not ever been done in guitar pedal, like a Shepherd oscillator, Rob Keeley sent me some papers about some college kids that actually figured out the same process around the same time but they're in Denmark, and there was just theory and all that stuff. It was interesting to see like the same diagrams in each in their like published paper and then my notebooks. But regardless, the shepherd's end is it's a flanger, so it's a delay line that's changing. Like the time of the delay is changing, but it changes in a way that it doesn't have a end, so to speak. So like the tunnel worm is going to modulate around a given time. Really, it sets an upper and lower bound the way the controls are set on where the times are going to vary from. So they might be, well, that's a through zero, so it may be even advanced beyond the, static delay line. So the static ones at, say, 1 millisecond, it may actually get to a quarter of a millisecond as the upper bound, and then all the way out to maybe 8 millisecond at the lower bound. The shepherd's end, on the other hand, continually sweeps upward, downward, or it can continually crest through the middle. It's an interesting way the whole thing works. It's, too complicated to yap on this one. Plus, it'd really be better with visual
Drawing.
representation as well.
I remember that's how you explained it to me the first time. It's the only reason I was able to fully grasp it. But
yeah, pictures help a lot. Regardless, that one's a shepherd oscillator. So really, it's 3 delay lines that are all kind of working together in tandem simultaneously, while the tunnel worm's 2, 1 static and 1 modulated. And then similarly, there's the subtractive process of the tunnel worm compared to the additive process of the shepherd's end, the standard shepherd's end. So instead of subtracting whatever the modulated delay line is from the static, as in the tunnel worm and many popular outboard flangers, pedals or whatever, the shepherd's end adds them together. So it creates a different sound at the end of the day, but technologically very, very different.
Right. Thank you for that. That's interesting. Got a lot of questions.
Okay.
So, normally I would just keep going, but I wanted to check on this Facebook thread and see what people were chiming in on. So let's, here's a good one. Jonathan Diaz wants to know, what was your favorite pedal to design? And conversely, which was the biggest headache?
Jonathan Diaz is his name?
Yeah.
So Jonathan Diaz, I think it was the shepherd's end was the most fun. That's the one I'm probably most proud of. That's just it. It's very hard, to put it lightly. Simply understanding the process is difficult, and then executing it is even more difficult. So that was which one? What was the question again?
It was what was your favorite one to design, and then which was the biggest headache?
The shepherd's end, I'd say on both of them.
Both of them?
Both
favorite
of them,
and
yeah.
biggest headache? Because you like the challenge.
Love it. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the only reason I'll bother.
If it's hard, then you like it better.
Yeah. Always.
Let's here's a good one. Luke Glover wants to know what is your favorite non-Mr. Black pedal?
Oh, that's an easy one. The Maxon 8999.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really, really, really nice delay pedal.
Analog delay.
Yeah. I can't even see why we make delay pedals at all with that thing around, or anybody does. That's just great.
I've never played one. What do you like so much about it?
It's just, it does everything right. You play that thing, you're like, oh, I wouldn't change anything about that at all.
That's what it's supposed to sound like, type of deal.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
It's really rare, I think, to encounter something that you wouldn't want to change, especially with guitar stuff, you maybe get a new guitar, you want to put different strings on it. You never pick one up and you're like, this is perfect as it is.
Especially not you.
Yeah. That one.
I know.
Perfect. Flawless execution.
I need to get one of those. You've talked about it in several different places, but
there's a reason. It's that good. It's expensive, but it's worth it.
So there's an interesting question. I'm not really sure if there's. Yeah, this is actually. I am curious. I've never really thought about this, but Emilio Rizzo wants to know, who is Mr. Black? And I'm thinking that means where did that come from?
Oh, where the origins of the name?
The name and the brand, because it is kind of a character.
Yeah. So around that time, that end of January 12, like I said, I had this girlfriend Victoria, and I knew I needed to do something new. And so we're walking around the neighborhood. I lived on the 35th and Hawthorne in Portland here, and we're walking through the neighborhood, and I'm like, man, I gotta do a new brand, and I don't know what to do or what to name it. I had a few ideas kicking around, so she's like, let's take a walk. So this is a January day in Oregon, but it's sunny, but it's cold. We're walking through the neighborhood and smoking some cigarettes and just being me and her, which was a volatile, fun combination. And I don't know where it came from, but I looked down on the gutter and I'm like, what if I just call it Mr. Black? And she just looks at me dead in the eye, and she's like, you already know the answer there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, done deal.
There we go.
That's it.
So you just kind of thought of it sort of randomly, but then it does seem to, like, the brand kind of has developed into like a kind of like a character, a person on its own. Is that intentional, or is that just kind of how things shook out?
This is kind of how it shook out. I mean, anybody that knows me knows I'm usually wearing black, if not entirely, like 90%. I mean, now I think I got a white shirt on, right? Yeah, but it's an undershirt. So
Yeah.
Jacket's like pretty dark blue, practically black. Everything else is. So it kind of works there. But it just kind of worked, Just kind of took on its own thing.
It fit in with your personality a little bit, and also kind of developed into its own monster in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and there's a certain level of ambiguity there as well, which is I really like,
Leave it up for interpretation, basically.
Yeah.
It can be whatever you want it to be.
Exactly.
Type of deal.
Yeah.
That's really, really interesting. Another question that was in the group from a good friend of the show, and I know you'll probably know this name too, Dustin Babitsky.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dustin.
Yeah,
I've been
Dustin's
a firm supporter for quite a number of years.
Yes, he's awesome. He wanted to know, and I mean, we've talked about this at length. How come your stereo pedals sound better than most other people's stereo pedals?
Oh, well, I mean, there's a lot there. For one, we just make better stuff. I mean, not to go too far off on the horn, but designed by one of the best, if not the best in the game. So there's that. But there's also part selection plays outside of the actual design of the circuit and algorithm and control system and all the rest of the nonsense there. Part selection plays a really big role. They're not arbitrarily selected parts. They are very specifically selected for the way they sound. Above all else, the layout plays a really big part as well. I remember talking with Jamie years ago about, this is at the NAMM show 15 maybe. Yeah, I think I was rolling that.
Jamie from Earthquaker.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that was the Calvin Klein suit year. I think it was a gray one. But either way, we were talking. No, that was a black one during the day. That was a black pinstripes. But we were talking about layout, and he was having some trouble with an early revision of the Rainbow Machine, or recounting it. It had been out for a bit. And he tore down a Mr. Black pedal and solved his problem, which, I remember, was a noise issue. And it came down to the layout and the way the thing was grounding.
Interesting.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I really like to do. And I think I do a pretty good job with it too, as Dustin noted. They sound good. Layout plays a huge role in how the finished product is going to perform and sound. And there's, I don't want to call it tricks, but, it's an art form in and of itself. And like any art, like once you know the rules and know what you can and can't do, then you can break and bend them tastefully to achieve the results that you want.
Okay.
And so, in short, like to answer Dustin's question, they sound better because they're just well designed. I mean, at the end of the day, they're intended to sound how they do and sound good.
Mm-hmm.
I don't particularly like things that don't work well.
Don't like things that don't work well.
Yeah,
it really bothers you.
Yeah, they really get under my skin.
Doesn't matter if it's a guitar pedal or whatever it is.
No, anything that performs poorly, it just really upsets me. And I won't name any names. A while back, there was power out, and I was bored at home, and there was only one pedal I had that had a battery, and I didn't know, I couldn't play it because the amps are all down, there's no power or nothing, but start monkeying around with it, and I found some bugs in it, and they're a friend of mine, so I hit him up and was like, hey dude, why is this, messed up? And he didn't know it was there. And I was like, dude, you got to fix this. This is crazy. Like, you have to fix this. It's driving me crazy. He's like, man, I've sold a bunch of those and nobody's ever found that, and nobody knows it's there. Like, how'd you find that? I'm like, I don't know. It's just, this is making me insane. Please
it's not working.
This so it doesn't exhibit this behavior. So in short, yeah, I mean, things that don't work. I was really upset that night. I mean, alcohol helps too, but I was pretty upset about that. So yeah, I mean, anything that don't work right just gets under my skin.
Yeah, it's funny. You've let me know before, and I'm like that's not yours. Why do you care?
I don't know. It just, it's one of those, like, people have their things that, like, they are drawn to or get upset about, and that's one of them. If anything doesn't work well, I'm like, this is not right. So
one thing I wanted to ask you, because we have somewhat similar backgrounds in our initial career choices. You were in auto, and I went into heavy equipment initially.
Yeah.
we both ended up going down radically different paths in the same industry. And I think mine makes a lot of sense to me. But yours, how you went from wrenching to being kind of the go-to hired engineer guy when it wasn't like your formal education or your formal thing. How does one go from A to B? You just that's part of the story I'm not quite following.
I've gotten that question a lot through the years because, I'm not college educated or even high school educated, and to me, it's a really simple, straightforward, logical process, right? Like in auto, I mean, I stand 5'5" on a good day. We were just talking about this. I'm 116 pounds today. I'm not exactly big physically. So I got stuck doing electrical and drivability, which is difficult and sucks as an apprentice because it's really hard. But as you get better at it and you're a journeyman, it's awesome because then you're like sitting clean with a computer in your hand, figuring out what is wrong with the car. And it's like one little sensor somewhere that's easy and you get paid really well to do that. While the other guys that are doing heavy duty are out there breaking their backs, pulling out trannies and all that nonsense. The progression was simple. I mean, like a car's a machine, right? And so any electronic device is a machine. Computer's a machine. You'll hear people call PCs machines all the time.
Totally.
For whatever reason, they don't say that with Apple products because they have their own whatever thing. But they're machines. And so if you can troubleshoot one machine, you can probably troubleshoot another, provided you know the basic fundamentals of troubleshooting. So it's not that far of a leap to go from automotive electronics to consumer electronics or audio, And also, I mean, I don't remember why you got out of heavy machinery, but look at old mechanics. Like, dude, they're just beat down, man.
It's even worse in some ways in the heavy equipment guys. I mean, they tend to get paid a little bit better.
Yeah.
But you're also, you're dealing with, you might have a transmission in a car that's a few hundred pounds. You're talking about transmission that could be, in heavy equipment that could be several thousand pounds, depending on what kind of thing you're doing.
I think I mentioned this to you years ago. Like when I moved up here, I was looking for work as a tech, and one of the jobs that was available was a diesel mechanic. And so it was actually not too far from where we're at right now. But I remember going there and applying, and I got all my ASCs and all that stuff. So they're like, "Cool, we can take you on. Have a look at the product, and it's like caterpillars, these big ass things, and like you're saying, like I saw the transmission, I'm like, hell nah, that thing's like 4 times the size of me, and like easily 7 times my weight. Like I understand you're gonna have tools and jacks and all that nonsense to move it. At the same time, like no way, dude. Like I can't do that. That's too heavy.
That was my world, and I seen some crazy things in that world where they weren't supposed to do this. And the guy was insane in my book because he got paid decent, but not enough to do what he did. So they were trying to calibrate some hydraulic motors on a dozer, and you can put the rear forks down and you can put the front blade down and lift the whole machine up off the ground so that you can run the tracks at speed and it's not going to go anywhere because it's not touching anything.
Yeah.
This crazy guy crawled under the thing while the tracks are running at full speed.
You guys can't see it, but my eyes just got huge.
Yeah, they did. He looked like he about to come out of the chair. So he's got one guy up running the controls, and he's got the tracks maxed out, and he's got his little laser gun underneath to check each side where he needed to check it, which is not the procedure. That's not what you're supposed to do.
I'm sure it would work, but that sounds really dangerous.
It was super dangerous, and he's like, "Come on, guys, stop being wimps." And and we were all like, "What?" And he just crawled under. I mean, dude was like 23. Well, like that could have been it.
Yeah, real fast. I mean, just get your shirt snagged on one of them and...
done.
You're lucky to come out with one arm.
Yeah. I mean, it was insane. And so I seen some of that stuff, and it wasn't expected or required, but still there was like this machismo thing.
Oh, yeah.
Especially in that business to some degree where it's like, oh, just grab it and do it, And
in then auto, dude. I remember seeing this one...
Busted.
What's that?
No, people just end up busted.
Yeah, man.
Totally.
This dude I used to work with, Leo, I remember this distinctly. We're at the old S-hole was what we called that shop. But he'd pulled a motor out of a CRV. This is like a, 98 CRV, something like that. So the motor's sitting on the subframe, and he's got to move it because I don't remember what he was doing, probably oil pan or something like that. For whatever reason, on those cars, it's easier to like just drop the whole front of the car, the subframe and all that nonsense.
Yeah.
So he's like, come on, give me a hand. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, come on, we're going to pick this up. I'm like, are you out of your mind? That's an engine, dude. He's like, it's just a 4-banger. I'm like, it's a motor, dude. Like, I'm sorry, I'm not picking that up. And there's a cherry picker right next to him.
Right, right.
I'm
Of
like,
course there
use
is.
that. I'm pointing at it, right? And he's like, well, come on, don't be a weenie. I'm like, forget it. Talk to somebody else. I ain't even trying to do all that. There's chains and a cherry picker, dude. I'm not picking that thing
That's
up.
what that's for.
Yeah,
You know?
specifically. His thing was, it would be faster. I'm like, maybe.
I'm paid by the hour. Like,
Well, it was flat rate, but
oh,
still,
you're
I'm
flat
like,
rate, right.
It ain't going to be faster if I throw my back out and I'm out for 3 weeks, you know?
Yeah, I've seen that all the time. I mean, and yeah, I have a lot of respect for guys that work in that industry because I know how difficult it is. But I kind of seen the same thing you did, and I was like, ooh, everyone who's over 50 and has done this for any length of time tends to be pretty busted up.
Oh,
Not universally. There were some guys that were smart and took care of themselves, but there was a lot more that were all messed up.
Most of them.
And had no problem just bathing in brake clean. And I'm like, that can't be good for you.
That was a trip too, getting out of that and suddenly not being sick and having rashes and all that stuff all the time.
Right.
It took me a bit to figure it out. I'm like, oh, that's right. I'm not covered in tranny fluid. Huh. Wild, no rashes.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I don't have to wash myself in gasoline to get the grease off of myself.
And it should tell you something. Like you put your gloves on or whatever, and whatever chemicals you're touching, fluids and all that are like melting your gloves off of you.
Yeah.
Like that's getting in my skin. I don't know if that's a good thing. You know?
Probably not. You know, we probably sound like, I don't know. I don't know what we sound like to some people, but I recognize the same things you did. And it wasn't the prime, because I do like wrenching. Like I do like working on cars. It's still something I enjoy, but it's like, yeah, it kind of became pretty clear. Like if I want to have a spine that works when I'm old, I probably should get into a different thing.
Yeah.
But you know, from time to time, I still like to spin wrenches once in a while.
It's okay. I try to avoid it now just out of pride, but I don't know. I kind of said to myself when I got out of it that I'm like, I'm never doing this again, ever. You know?
How long did you do it?
8 years.
8 years. Okay, that's about what I did too.
When I
8
get
years.
out, when I was 28. No, more than that. Well, cars for 8, and I was working on small machines and like pressure washers and all that stuff for maybe 2 before that. Like from when I was like 18 or whatever till 28.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things I wanted to ask you, and not that you necessarily want to create mounds of competition for yourself, but like if there's like some smaller builders that are looking at trying to take a leap or move forward out of the garage, so to speak, like do you have any tips for people kind of starting out?
Grow a pair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just do it.
That's it. Yeah. Do it. Trust yourself. Be good. Also, that helps. And do it. There's not. I don't know, man. I mean, I'm. At the end of the day, it's a business. That's one thing you really got to keep in mind. Is like you're going into business. Treat it any other way, and don't expect to support yourself with it. At the same time, it's it doesn't cost a lot to get into making guitar pedals on a small scale. On a large scale, it totally changes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a business. I mean, you got to treat it like that. And unless you're bringing something good to the table, it's been done, And even if you are bringing something good to the table, it's kind of been done. So you really got to be sharp, good at it, and believe in yourself, man. I mean, there's nothing beyond that I can really think. Like, you just got to go for it and don't stop.
Just do it.
Yeah, and do it like it's she let you take her home on the first date and you want a second one, Like, you really got to put the work in.
So, do you have anything other than obviously, some things you alluded to earlier, the business deals didn't go quite the way we wanted. Do you have any kind of mistakes or regrets that you could, advise somebody about?
In what facet? Like life?
No, well, I mean, if you want to go there, we could do that. I was more thinking the business side of things.
In business? Yeah, don't take partners, ever. I'm not a fan of partners. I don't see a reason for that. I see that as a sign of weakness, but that's just me. Definitely develop a team and recognize what you are good at and what you're not good at, but I cannot see a reason for partners. What was the other side of that? What was the rest of the question?
Just basically, were there any mistakes that you kind of experienced yourself that you could save somebody else the pain?
Yeah, listening to other people's input and taking it as solid. Like, if you think, trust your gut, basically. If you think it's a good idea, it's probably a good idea. And if you really believe in it, you'll make it happen. And be willing to take that risk, be able to say I was wrong also.
Gotcha. Do you have anybody in the industry or otherwise that that helped you out or give you a kick start, so to speak, or did you just kind of scrap your way through it?
No, everybody gets help here and there. I mean, I'd like to believe that I've done okay for myself, but a lot of it's just me, but not exclusively. That would be ignorant and really myopic and self-centered to think. I mean, obviously my guys, I couldn't do it without them. They're kind of backbone of the whole thing. Nick definitely help out when he was around. I remember Mr. Black had barely been going, and he kind of introduced his crowd to it. Said like, "Hey, check it out, my buddy Jack's doing this thing," and that helped out.
Cool.
Sean at Love Pedals really helped out quite a bit as well. Just been generally supportive and a good friend as well. Turns out me and him are a lot more alike than we even initially realized. Who else, man? I mean, the list goes on. Jamie's been really helpful, and Julie at Earthquaker. Juan's been really helpful as well. He really liked that funk and really helped us with that one. So yeah, I mean, that's
a whole host of people.
Yeah, I'm sure I could think of more, but I'd need time or whatever.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think this is a sort of unique business in that regard, and we've talked about it on this show a lot with a lot of people. I feel like I haven't worked in just a ton of different industries, but I feel like it's the level of collaboration and kind of camaraderie is a lot higher than what it would be in other things. Is that your experience too, or what do you think?
Yes and no. I mean, I think there's enough pie on the table for everybody to get a piece. Everybody that's just deserving, as it were. That's a kind of selfish and superior thing to say, but anyone that's like put the work in and tries, there's enough for all of us. There's no need to be super mean and selfish.
Right.
And I do find that in general, folks can be, helpful, pretty helpful, with whatever it may be. If it's a technical thing, that's usually my end. And if it's a people thing, that's, other people's ends.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So I'd say, yeah.
So this is something that you've probably been, I know you've had requests over the years, but I know 2 years ago, you and I talked about you making an amplifier. And it sounded like the craziest thing that I'd ever heard of. So I don't know if we want to talk about that, how much you can reveal or if that's ever going to happen, but
I think it will in time. I got the the chassis sketched out or whatever. It's a tricky one. At the end of the day, I have an amp that I really, really like. And it's kind of like the Maxon delay where it's you just can't do better. Why even try? Mm-hmm. That amp's a high watt DR504, which is just if you've never played a high watt, don't. Because it'll just ruin everything for you. Nothing competes. They're in a class and league and world of their own. With that said, that amp is only 50 watts. And my main guy, Justin, is like me in a lot of ways. And specifically this one, he likes really powerful amps. And I do too. I like them really hard is how I describe them, and loud and powerful. And that high watt's awesome and does all those things, but it's only 50 watts. And, some people would say that's a lot. Some people would say that's a little. I think it's a comfortable, what's the right word? Medium caliber amplifier.
Okay.
But it's only 50. And as a result, it does distort when you get it loud. There's a limit to how loud I can turn that thing all the way up. And I'm like, oh, this could be louder, But it's only 50 watts. I keep coming back to that because it's only 50 watts. And I really want that amp to be about 400 watts. So
it's so crazy.
Yeah. Of clean power. That's the thing with that high watt. They say it's 50. I bet you it's probably, I haven't done the load testing calculations, but I bet you it's kicking out about 70 before it starts clipping and then probably hits 85 or something like that by the time it's on full tilt roaring.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I always forget that that's how amps work.
Yeah, I mean, it's an approximate measurement or whatever and depends on a lot of variables.
Right.
With that said, I want that thing to be 400 watts clean power. So basically you can't turn it up to get it to distort and it be in any way, shape, or form reasonable or unreasonable. That's just absurd. So the dream there is to make more or less an amp that not sounds like that amp, but delivers all the qualities of it, which is just awesome, hard, instant, fast, powerful response, but is so loud that you would never, ever want to turn it up, ever.
Right.
Like
It'd be dangerous.
halfway is like way beyond the sane.
Would this have like a half power switch or anything? You just let it
No,
let it
I don't
roar?
even want like tone controls on it. I only want a volume control. And the only reason
That's so gnarly.
Yeah, and the only reason for that volume control is so that you weren't running it wide open all the time. Because there are times when like 400 is going to be too much, and instead of having to rely on like outboard, like whatever's feeding it, say a volume pedal at the end of the chain, having some kind of way to dial it back without the risk of like bumping the volume pedal or nudging your guitar volume or whatever. That one control is all I want on that amp.
And you're talking 400 watts. Oh, actually, this would be a good question because I actually don't know the answer to this, and this is a totally different segue. But I was going to say this is 400 watt all tube.
Yeah.
So here's my question to you, because I don't know why I've never asked anybody this before. How come most of the time when you're talking about solid state amps, so I got like a 120 watt crate over there.
Yeah.
Just a cheap, old amp. And I've got a 100 watt Marshall clone.
Why is the tube louder?
Why is it so much louder?
The best solution I've ever heard to that, I don't know, so we'll put that disclaimer out first. But I have my beliefs, and this is my belief. Assuming that wattage is equal, when you drive, this is the other side where I was saying like it's probably 50 watts clean or 60 watts clean, and then before onset of clipping, and then it keeps going into 75, 80 by the time it's full bore and ripping.
Right.
So when a solid state by definition is going to be like transistorized, right? Mm-hmm. So when a transistor saturates, it literally, pull up a data sheet and look how it works. It's pretty straightforward. It cuts off hard. It's like, what do they call it? Like a piecewise function. Like it goes up to a point and then it flattens out. A tube, on the other hand, as it begins to reach its point of saturation, doesn't do it abruptly. It does it at a soft angle. This is like where people are like, oh, it's soft clipping or whatever BS they like to say their favorite little dirt box has. That's why it sounds like a tube amp, right?
Right.
But there's something there in that it doesn't just saturate and completely shut off. Now, full saturation, yes, a tube will, but right during that transition, it's not a sharp line like it would be with a transistor. So if you take that same concept and put it to a speaker, right? A speaker, the typical like a loudspeaker, you're sending a pulse of electricity to drive this magnet back and forth. What's going to happen when that cutoff happens is you're saturating your transistor, what's driving the speaker, the loudspeaker, so that voice coil, as it's moving, basically can no longer like develop speed. And it's, what's the right way to put this? Like it's going to hit that wall instantly, where a tube is going to slowly hit that wall. So imagine the speaker is moving back and forth, and it moves all the way to its fullest travel and stops dead, and then it moves back to its full travel and stops dead. Where a tube, it's going to move and then start to slow down right before it hits its full travel.
Okay.
Does this make sense at all?
It does, yes.
Okay, so as that begins to happen, like because it's not stopping so abruptly, I believe that it's actually pushing a little more volume, right? Because it's not stopping, so the sound wave that it's generating isn't just being abruptly ceased in movement.
Still pushing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting. Yeah, I've wondered that before. I remember actually I the first time I plugged into a 15 watt like Tiny Terror or something, and I was like, why is this almost as loud as my 120 watt stupid crate thing over there? Like, this doesn't make any sense, but
that's my theory. I don't know. I remember years ago when I was gigging in San Francisco, I used to play with this one band pretty frequently, and at the time I was rocking a PV Bandit because that's all I could afford. Mm-hmm. And it sounded pretty good. Anybody who's had one of those knows, like, hey man, they sound good, and if you want to do some death metal, look no further.
Yeah, exactly.
Regardless, he had a pentatone, PV pentatone, and that thing was way louder. Both are 100 watt amps. And I remember talking with him one time. He's like, yeah, if you want to be heard at the back of the club, you got to get a tube amp. And that was like his whole thing, which, there's a lot to that. But he's right. Their 100 watt tube is notably louder than 100 watt solid state.
Yeah.
And I believe, again, it's because it doesn't cut off the power to the speaker as abruptly.
That does make sense. I still can't imagine what 400 watts would do.
It's great.
Having cranked a 120 watt in my house and shook everything off of the wall, I can't even imagine.
Oh, I mean, you get a bass amp like a SVT or what have you. That's 300, and
That's
just
true.
run a guitar into it and open it up. It's awesome.
That sounds like tinnitus waiting to happen. But
Put some earplugs in, or even like an old Marshall. You know, we got that super bass at the shop, and
right,
I mean that kicks it out, man. That's only 100.
that's true.
You know,
Only 100.
yeah. Or the triple rack. I mean, I got a triple rack at the house, and that thing lays it down, man. Like it's pretty loud. No lie.
So we've talked a lot about the guitars and the pedals and the amps rather, but we haven't really got into guitars too much. I don't know what all you have. I know I've seen you frequently. Like there's a picture of you with a Gretsch.
Yeah, I really like that one.
What do you got in the stash, and what's your favorite?
Oh man, lots of them. I honestly don't know how many. I think it's probably like 20 at this point, maybe. I don't know. There's a lot. The number one electric is the Iceman. It's an IC400.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a Korean-made guitar. It might be Japanese, but I think it's Korean. But that's like my number one. That's like my favorite. It just sounds great. You know, surprisingly, it's a really good clean guitar also. That thing with the high watt is just a crushing sound. Because it's like big old monstrous slab of mahogany.
Oh,
you
yeah,
know?
totally.
And like many things in life, I like them as big as I can get them.
Mm-hmm.
So like if they made a bigger guitar, I would have got one. Or if I could have afforded an Explorer at that time, I would have got an Explorer. I used to rock a similar guitar, Dean Z, I think it was called. Like just giant, massive, ultra, super huge guitar.
Mm-hmm.
But that Iceman, that's probably the number one. Then there's the double cutaway Les Paul that's really good. Oh, the thing with that Iceman I should elaborate on, it's got really low output pickups in it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're really low.
From the factory?
No, I think they're like the slash whatever. I don't remember. They're an Alnico 2, and I think they're wound at like 7.8 or something like that.
Oh, okay.
Like pretty weak pickups.
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of what I like about them. Like I find that weaker, lower output humbuckers just sound better.
I think so too. That's been my experience.
Yeah, you get way more definition, and I just prefer them. If I want more boost, I'll just grab a booster pedal. You know?
That's what I've always thought about, especially the same thing with active electronics. I feel exactly the same way for the most part.
They hold there is an application for actives. I got a few guitars that have EMGs in them, and there's a reason that like Metallica sounds like Metallica, and it's EMGs, man. I mean, also like James and Kurt can play, but those pickups, like there's a response that they get, and it's really like constant. Mm-hmm. And that's where I think EMGs come into play in actives.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, that's what I mean. Obviously, I'm not not a successful guitar player like them, but that's what I've always kind of been the rub with them. Is like I'm very dynamic with my playing.
Yeah,
and those kind of kill that. You know.
Yeah, they remove it. They're really great if you want like consistent chug, or like I always come back to the Metallica song "Sad But True" because it's rad for one, but two, like the opening note is like an A chord, or maybe it's an A flat, and it's so heavy.
It's so good.
Like it's an A chord, and it's so heavy, you know? But that's like that particular sound that makes, where it's like jing, and it just rides forever, and it's like constant. Mm-hmm. That's like the active thing.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. So Iceman's the number one. I didn't know that. I knew you liked that guitar a lot. I didn't know it was the number one.
Yeah, that's my favorite.
I just found out, and he's been here for a few years, ironically, but Paul Gilbert lives here.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I rode the plane. We weren't like buddies, but we rode the plane to Nam, and he was on it.
Like, I had no idea.
Yeah, I didn't know either.
He plays an upside down Iceman, though.
Oh, that's right, he does, doesn't he? This is backwards.
Yeah.
I like yours better, I think.
Me too.
Yeah. The Iceman.
Yeah, no, that guitar's rad. It all goes back to Dystopia. Like, I remember I saw Dystopia in like 98 maybe, and God, what's the Dino, I think is their guitar player's name. I can't remember. I didn't like know the dude personally, but if you don't know Dystopia, go out and get Human Equals Garbage, and your life is going to change. Regardless, Dystopia's playing, and it's like a ripper of a show. Everybody's going nuts, and he breaks a string. He used to play like, it was either a purple or a green Iceman. I think it was the green one that he had that night, but he's got this Iceman. That's the coolest guitar. I mean, it's a punk band, you know, like, and he's got an Iceman. Like, it's just so different and just way cool. So he breaks a string, And everybody's like, "Oh, dude, this is weak. Like, what are they gonna do?" And he pulls out a second Iceman. And
He's
it was
like, I got it. Don't worry.
the coolest thing in the world. Like a purple Iceman just comes out of nowhere, and everybody just goes bananas. So that kind of cinched it up for me. I was like, I gotta have one of those. That's the coolest guitar.
That's awesome. That is really funny. So that does answer a question I was going to ask you. I was like, who's some of your musical heroes?
For like rock, you mean?
Whatever.
I really like Mac Dre. I mean, to me, that dude kind of just took it and did it way too good and way too big. And too bad the man's dead. But you know, I really hold that guy in pretty high regard. You know, then with rock, like Social Distortion, I really like that band.
Oh yeah,
they're pretty good.
Love
like,
Social D.
Les Paul and a bassman and just plug it in. Like I don't know, I kind of love that setup, man. That rips.
It sounds awesome.
Yeah,
he's got some of my favorite straight ahead rock and roll guitar tone is Social D by a long shot.
It's incredible. Metallica as well, really like them. Slayer, of course. Lately, I've been really into Municipal Waste.
Okay,
because they're
nice.
just awesome, you know. And a lot of those thrash bands, and it's a punk band that really changed me from Oakland called El Dopa. That I still listen to that record like pretty regularly. It's it's crust or whatever. It's pretty gnarly, but awesome band.
Were you in the scene with those guys?
Yeah, we played with them a few times.
Cool.
They were older and so like cooler, and we were like 18. We couldn't play at Annie's or nothing like that or Covered Wagon. So not till we got older. Didn't get to play all those shows.
So here's one I've been trying to work into the rotation at the request of some of the listeners, and I think it's kind of an interesting question. It'll be really interesting to see your take on it. But what is your favorite Boss pedal?
The tuners are great.
Yeah, TU2, TU3.
Yeah. No, but on the real, those things are really good. Like they work excellently, and I talk about it gold standard.
Like, they're indestructible.
Yeah, they don't break. What are the other ones that I like? Oddly enough, the CS3. Oh no, you know what it is? The TR2.
The TR2?
Yeah, not because it sounds good. It does sound good, but the design on that is like incredible. Specifically, the layout of the circuit board is just whoever did that's really smart. Like that thing should not be as quiet as it is.
They've got it laid out right.
Yeah, it's brilliant. That's another one we're talking about. Up and comers. Buy one of those. Anyone who's like listening and wants to like learn how to make guitar pedals, buy a TR2, tear it down, and figure out why it sounds good.
Okay,
it's all there. You'll see it, but there's a reason, and the layout is amazing.
That's interesting. That's very, very interesting. All right, well, we're getting down to the kind of the hour mark here, and I got to ask you the big question. This is the one that people get kind of worked up about. What kind of pizza do you like?
I like Hawaiian pizza, actually.
Get out of here.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites, man. That's what I had last time we got pizza. That's what I always end up ordering.
Hawaiian pizza.
Yeah.
I did not take you for a Hawaiian pizza guy.
Yeah, I mean, I did get down on it, dude. It's that or like, I'm not that picky. I mean, I'll pretty much, as long as it's not like exotic. The ones that have like curry, whatever, broccoli, all that BS, nah, dude. Nah. Like Hawaiian's kind of getting out on a limb for me, but that's what I end up getting. Other than that, like cheese pizza's good too.
You got a favorite local spot?
Hammy's is where I usually go.
Hammy's. I've never been there.
It's in Southeast Portland. They're great. Really salty, but I mean, it's pizza. What do you expect? You know? And then there's another spot, Rovente, that...
Oh, I've heard that's awesome.
Yeah, it's unnecessarily expensive, but it's good.
Okay. I'll have to check that out. I've definitely heard good things.
It used to be dirty cheap, man. You could get a large or extra large cheese takeout for $8.
Not anymore.
No. But that was like a lot. I mean, dude, trust me, that was you finish one of them, you're probably not going to want another one, you know?
You were done.
Not for that day, at least.
Nice. Very nice. Anything else you want to say to the people before we knock off for the main episode here?
I mean, not really. Just be good people. Don't be a jerk, you know?
That works.
Like, I don't know. Try to do something nice for somebody and help your friends and people that aren't your friends out. That's kind of all I got.
That sounds pretty good, man.
Yeah.
Well, thanks very much for coming on. This is way overdue. I'm really glad we got to do it.
Yeah, me too. Finally put it together.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
For sure. Anytime. All right, everybody. For Jack, this is Blake. And as always, folks, good luck and good tones. There you go, folks. Thank you very much for tuning in and sticking around and hanging out and all that good stuff. If you want to check out all the Mr. Black stuff, and I highly recommend that you do. Some of my favorite pedals out there. Blood Moon is actually one of my favorite reverb pedals ever. Go ahead and go to MrBlackPedals.com and check all that stuff out. Your ears will thank you, trust me. I personally have been playing them for a long time, and they're some of my favorites. So yeah, other than that, if you want more tone mobbery and nonsense, slide over to patreon.com/tonemob, whereas for as little as, wow, my talker is like broken today. It's no good. For as little as $5 a month, you get an extra episode every week of tone mobbery and nonsense delivered right to whatever podcast player you're using. And yeah, you can check all that out over at patreon.com/tonemob. And yeah, until next week, we'll be hanging out. I got some really awesome guests lined up. I think you guys are going to be really excited to see some of these new ones. I can't drop it just yet, but I'm in talks. I'm in talks with some people you want to hear from. So we'll try to make that happen. Until then, share this with a friend, a family member, coworker, sibling, something. Yeah, because a sibling's not a family member. What am I talking about? Share it with somebody. If you really enjoyed this, I would really appreciate it if you could recommend this to somebody else, because that's how podcasts grow, is when the audience tells a friend. That's what we need. That's what we need around here. So thank you very much for everyone that has done that, and for everyone that has left nice reviews on iTunes and any of the other places you guys want to leave reviews. That helps a lot. So I'll talk to you guys next week. Thanks. Bye. One last thing before we totally sign off here. I just want to remind you that if you do any shopping at Stringjoy, that's Stringjoy guitar strings made in Nashville, that will help me out as well. As I've said for years, I'm heavily involved in that company, and I really do think they're making the best products on the market. So if you would like to try custom strings, go to tonemob.com/stringjoy and check them out today. I seriously love what the team down there is doing. I help them out with all kinds of things, and by you supporting them, you are also supporting me as well. And hey, you need some strings, so why not get some custom strings just for your guitar and playing style? Again, the link for that is tonemob.com/stringjoy, and that will take you right to their website, and you can do all your shopping through there, and that will help everyone involved out. So thank you very much. Talk to you next time. We are brought to you by the wonderful folks at Gun Street Wiring Shop. Yes, Gun Street Wiring Shop. I've talked about them before. I used to say based out of Bend, Oregon, but guess what? Sean moved to my neck of the woods. Sean's in Portland. Sean is awesome and has helped me with a bunch of stuff lately. And if you have wiring needs for your guitar, he can help you too. If you want to get weird with it, he can get weird. If you just need to spruce things up a little bit, there's your guy. He takes all the guesswork out of doing your guitar wiring, and he makes it simple, and his customer service is top-notch, and I can't say enough good things about Gun Street as a company. I really respect Sean and what he's all about, and the product is top-notch. I've got 3 different guitars that now have Gun Street harnesses in them, and I could not be happier. So go to gunstreetwiringshop.com and check them out.